Hey kiddies, it's the return of Uncle Jay here. Did you miss me? Probably not. I don't really care anyway, but it's been a while since I made a video, so I figure, I'd say what the fuck. And this is actually a thought that I was thinking the other day. While Pogo was still alive, we used to talk about what was the greatest year in music. And not necessarily just metal, but, there's a lot of metal, you know what I'm saying? What was the greatest year in your opinion? I'll let you think about it. Alright, that's enough. So, in my opinion, in me and Pogo's opinion, our favorite year in music is involved in all of these right here. And that is the graceful year of 1994, which is one thing that all of these have in common. So, I'm going to go through every album. Nothing crazy in depth, because there's some albums here that I know maybe one or two songs off of, and then the rest of it I could really give a fuck about, because I'm more of a collector, I guess, but I have to at least like something. And the first one that comes off, which is it's actually a double disc. It's Two from the Vault, it's called, and I'm talking about the one that's going to be on the left, which is Obituary, World Demise. I don't know how well you can see that, but I'm trying. This one right here, which came out in 1994. I've listened to, I think I listened to the whole album like one time or something like that. I like Obituary, they're just not my go-to band, but the song I Don't Care and World Demise are fantastic fucking songs. They're real badass shit. And this one actually has a few live tracks on it too, so that's pretty cool. So that means when they put these two albums together, which is The End Complete and World Demise, that they were basically the remastered version. So that's pretty cool. Our next 1994 is, I guess, a punkish kind of a band. I don't know. Back in 1994, as you would know, everything was called alternative because they didn't have any names for the genres yet. But here we have the OffSpring with Smash. Here's another one that I never really listened to the whole thing of, but a lot of big album right here. A lot of big fans of it. There's a guy at work that has the whole album of this on his iPod that he listens to all the time. And, he obviously has the whole thing. But I was always into all the hits. Self-Esteem. What is it? Come Out and Play. Gotta Get Away. Bad Habit. Which I don't think Bad Habit was released as a single. But it's a pretty dope song. So that's another 94. And here's yet another one that I never really listened to the whole thing of. You got some people that are yay, some people that are nay, and that is Hole with Live Through This, which I forget whether this was her first album or not, but it might have been her first album after the death of Kurt Cobain. I'm guessing it would have to be, because it came out in 94, and that's when Kurt Cobain died, so that's a little bit of a brain fart I got going on there. But again, it's mostly the hits, Violet, Miss World, and Doll Parts are the only songs I listen to on here. If there's any songs that I didn't mention that I listened to and the ones that I don't listen to the whole thing of. In the comments, tell me what songs are good, and I'll check them out, and either that or I'll just take your fucking word for it. Next one is another one that I only listen to the hits, really. I was never really big onto this group. Again, I'm a collector, but, you know, there's some songs on here that are alright. They just wouldn't be like a go-to album to bring to my car and listen to on a road trip or anything like that. And that's Green Day Dookie. And, you know, with the hits like Long View, Welcome to Paradise, and of course Basket Case, which was probably really brought Green Day out into the limelight. And then after Basket Case, you had When I Come Around, which was another pretty big one. But yeah, so Green Day, 94, kind of bringing punk into the mainstream. So they got a lot of hate from real punk rockers, but a lot of love from people who were never introduced to punk, so that's cool. Here's one that it says that it was made in December of 94, so it probably came out in 95, probably January or February. And that is Dimmu Borgir, For All Tid. And I know nothing about this album except for the fact that this was when Dimmu Borgir still sounded like black metal and not that weird symphonic shit with the clean vocals and all that silly shit. Don't get me wrong, I love puritanical euphoric misanthropia and spiritual black dimensions with Vortex's clean vocals, but they were limited use. Now it's throughout the whole fucking album, just like Eminem's new shit with Rihanna spitting all over it. Do me a favor and close that fucking umbrella. Alright, our next one is another one. Funny as hell how I picked these out, and I just picked out, you know, randoms. You know what I'm saying? And right next to it, Cradle of Filth with the Principles of Evil Made Flesh. This is an EP. I believe this was their first store release. I'm sure that they've had some other stuff earlier than this, but this is the one that you were able to find in the stores, more of the mainstream shit of Cradle of Filth. And again, Danny Phil still had the screams, and they weren't so goofy back then, and now I see Cradle of Filth as just a circus of shit. And obviously the one song that most people would know from here would be the title track, which is The Principles of Evil Made Flesh. But The Forest Whispers My Name is a great song as well, but I think they did a better version of it in the Vampire EP, which either came out before Dusk in Her Embrace or after. Our next one is kind of getting away from the metal and the alternative scene, and we got Coolio, It Takes a Thief. And this one right here has the, I don't know if they were called hits, but I remember seeing them on MTV with Fantastic Voyage, and was that it? I think that might have been it. I'm looking back here, and I think the only video I remember this was from Fantastic Voyage, because it wasn't until the next one that the what was that other song called again? Gangsta's Paradise. That's what it was. Gangsta's Paradise. So Yeah, this is another one I never really listened to. Fantastic. As a matter of fact, I bought this and I realized that there's something missing on here, and that's the parental advisory. So I was duped into getting a censored version. So it's a real piece of shit. Okay, our next one is a little bit different than the other ones because it's an album that I've listened to through and through a million times over. Never get tired of it. One of the greatest albums, if not the greatest album to ever come out in history, and that is 9 Inch Nails' The Downward Spiral. I mean, is there anything that needs to be said about this album? I don't think so. I don't think there's anything that I could say about this album that would ever do it justice. With the hits such as Closer and You Got Hurt, there are songs on here that are just so brilliant, such as Ruiner, I Do Not Want This, Piggy, Mr. Self-Destruct. I mean, the whole thing is absolutely wild. And if you were... If your idea of 9 Inch Nails is only the song Closer, it's so much more than that. It's so much more violent than that. It kind of switches back and forth from a softer, really demented kind of sound to just something that's like a chainsaw. It's just so wild, so insane. And it's really hard to really define this album as what it is. And I've always been the kind of person to say that the idea of this album is for you to figure out what it is in yourself. And that's the best way that I could put this album. Absolutely incredible. Our next one is stray from the alternative and metal and rap and things of that nature. Well, kind of metal. This is black metal, Die Mysterious Dom Satanis by the band Mayhem. And look, I can see my reflection right there. You see that? See me waving? Yeah. Alright, so I actually saw this album on tour for the anniversary show back in 2016. So I don't know why it wasn't 2014, but it is what it is, and I was lucky to actually see the show. And the song Freezing Moon on here is so amazing. It's actually a really great album. I haven't listened to it as much as I should, because I am a Mayhem fan. I do enjoy black metal, especially the true black metal. Not all the stuff that is hyped up to be more popular and things of that nature. But Freezing Moon, Funeral Fog, absolutely fantastic songs. So definitely a great album that came out in 1994. Our next one, you guys might be surprised about. I just got into because I really didn't know much about him. And I still don't know much about him. I've listened to a few songs from this album. And I'm talking about the 1994 release of Illmatic by Nas. Now, the one thing that I can say is that New York State of Mind is one of the dopest songs that I've ever heard in my entire life. From the beat, to the rapping, to the sound, it is just bar none. And I'm really excited to really get into the rest of this album and kind of get used to it, because it's very rare for a song to come on for me to just jump in and say, whoa, this is dope as fuck. But I feel like this will definitely grow on me. It's still kind of alien to me because, you know, most of the shit that I really been into was Wu-Tang Clan and, you know, the Compton stuff like NWA and Compton's Most Wanted and shit like that. So But again, fantastic album right here. I'm foreseeing, and 9 times out of 10, this is on a top 10 list of greatest rap albums. Our next one is another guy from New York City, which is another fantastic album. Always has big reviews. I mean, it's never let anybody down, I don't think. And that's Notorious B.I.G. Ready to Die. With, wow. When I first heard the song, Gimme the Loot, I was blown away. It was so fucking violent and so real and so powerful that I can't even explain it. It's just so good. The flow is so perfect. And then you got the hits like Juicy and Big Papa, and Ready to Die is a fantastic song. Who Shot You? The whole thing is really, really fucking good. It's another one I really need to listen to more often. But again, another fantastic album from 1994. Okay, so here's another one that I've listened to through and through again, over and over. One of the greatest albums that I've ever heard in my life. My favorite album from Marilyn Manson, and that is Portrait of an American Family. This, if this is not the most satanic album I've ever heard in my life, then I don't think anything is. Fuck black metal, fuck death metal, fuck all this, devil shit as, created as some kind of a cartoon character. This is true evil. This is true wickedness. Not to say that Satanism is only dealt with evil and wicked, because it's its own thing. But it's just such a spooky, spooky thing with these samples that are in there that are intended to just throw you off and spin your mind. And you got Lunchbox, which was a radio song, and you got Dope Hat, which was a radio song, and Get Your Gun was also a video on MTV. But the whole thing, from Sweet Tooth to Snake Eyes and Sissies to Cake and Sodomy, Wrapped in Plastic, absolutely perfect album, a perfect album. And I really wish Marilyn Manson as well as 9 Inch Nails were still like this, because they were just so fucking good. Okay, so we have another quote-unquote alternative album, which I don't even know if there's even a genre for this. Maybe it's just rock. But we have Live, Throwing Copper. And this is another album I never listened to the whole thing of. I've only listened to the hits. But I really enjoy Selling the Drama and All Over You. Fantastic songs. They weren't as popular as I Alone and Lightning Crashes, but I really do enjoy those songs, probably because I haven't heard them to death on the radio back in 1994 or 95. So, another 1994. Okay, here's another one that I've listened to through and through, front and back, really enjoy. Was my favorite Megadeth album for the longest time until I really listened to Rust in Peace. And that is Euthanasia. Euthanasia is the third studio album featuring my favorite Megadeth lineup, which was Marty Freeman, Dave Mustaine, David Ellefson, and Nick Mason. Or, I'm sorry, Nick Menza. Nick Mason's from Pink Floyd. I'm a fucking idiot. But Nick Menza, unfortunately, he passed away. And I remember the MTV videos for Train of Consequences and Atelier Monde. But The Killing Road, Blood of Heroes, I Thought I Knew It All, Euthanasia, the title track. Fucking perfect album. Absolutely perfect. Alright, here's another one that I've listened to through and through, over and over again. And that is Korn's debut self-titled album. Obviously, you know, it had the hit Blind and Chutes and Ladders. But, I mean, give credit to where credit is due. Predictable, Fake, Lies, Need To. Oh my God. I say fantastic so much because maybe it's more than that. It's just so fucking good. Then we have an album by Insane Clown Posse that came out in 94, which I consider their gangster version of Insane Clown Posse, which is The Ringmaster. And I've listened to this album plenty of times, and it's definitely one of my favorites. It would have to be in between this and the Riddle Box. And it's a really great album. I mean, you got a lot of people that put hate on the Clowns, and I do too. I can't stand Insane Clown Posse, but I give them credit where credit's due. Their 90s stuff was great. Their live shows are spectacular. 9 times out of 10, they do a lot of their 90s material. And I don't even know if they ever had any videos for this, but Murder Go Round, Chicken Hunting, but usually it's the remastered version that's on Riddle Box. Mr. Johnson's Head, Wagon, House of Mirrors. It's a good one. I like the 90s Insane Clown Posse. So now we're going back to black metal. And we have the Norwegian band Gorgoroth with Pentagram. And I've listened to this album plenty of times, and there's not really much to put out there about it except that I do enjoy it. But there's no songs that stick out except for Crushing the Scepter, which has a really cool beat to it. And it's almost like listening to Dark Side of the Moon. It's something that you put on and then you just leave on. And no matter what part of the album you're on, you find yourself really enjoying it. Let's just call this the black metal version of Dark Side of the Moon. Oh, we got another black metal band here. This is Samael. And I think they're a Swedish black metal band. But again, another album that came out in 1994. I've listened to the whole thing before, and it is really good. I do remember enjoying it. But the songs that I listen to the most are Baphomet's Throne. That one's my favorite one. And I remember Pogo really enjoyed this one too. The next one is a bit different than everything else. This is Tom Petty, Wildflowers. Another album I never listened to the whole thing of. The only songs I ever got into are, the MTV songs. You Don't Know How It Feels and Good to Be King. You Wreck Me was another one, but I never really listened to that one because, I don't know, I just really wasn't into it. Our next one is one that I've listened to through and through again. It's so fucking good. And that is 1994's Slayer, Divine Intervention. What can I say about this album? And that is, it's very underrated. Everything is Rain and Blood or South of Heaven. No. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love Slayer, especially the early Slayer. But this was my very first Slayer album. I love it to death. I don't know if there were any hits off of it, But Killing Field starts off with the drumming, and every song on here is just so powerful and in your face, and they kind of got away from the thrash and went more for the groove Pantera kind of style in a way, with a little bit of thrash. You know, I'm not saying that they sound anything like Pantera, but it definitely makes you want to move. And now we're going back to a bit of a softer rock, and that is Pink Floyd Division Bell. I don't really listen to this album. I never listened to the whole thing, and what I have heard of it, I really didn't get into. The only song I did like, which was worth getting the album, was High Hopes, which is the last track, and is such an amazing song. And the solo that's on the slide guitar that David Gilmour does just sounds so beautiful, and would make anyone want to pick up a guitar just to play that. So, High Hopes, the only song I ever listened to on this album. Here's another one that I've listened to front and back. Rollins Band, Wait, with the MTV song Liar, which is probably the reason why I got this. And the whole thing is really good. Disconnect, Fool, Wrong Man. It has a parental advisory on it, but there's only one song that has the F word in it, and that's Step Back. So this was a good first album to have if I was around parents that didn't like swearing and music and shit like that, so I would just skip track number 7. Here's another one I've listened to front and back. 1994 is Pantera, Far Beyond Driven, my first Pantera album. What can I say about this album? Basically the same thing that could be said about The Downward Spiral and Portrait of an American Family. That this album is perfect front to back. I can remember when I first put it in, I almost considered it unlistenable because I had just gotten into metal. Definitely out of ranks with Ozzy Osbourne and Jane's Addiction and Allison Chains and shit like that. It really had to grow on me, and it did, and I'm glad that it did, because this album's gotten me through a lot of hard times. With the hits such as 5 Minutes Alone, I'm Broken, and then even the cover of Black Sabbath's Planet Caravan. Other songs like Slaughtered, Shedding Skin, 25 Years, Becoming, the whole thing is perfect through on through. Another piece of gold from 1994. This one right here is Super Unknown by Soundgarden. Never really listened to the whole thing of this. Mostly listened to the MTV hits, which there were quite a few, like My Wave, Fell on Black Days, Black Hole Sun, Spoon Man, The Day I Tried to Live. But I really do enjoy Head Down, which is the track before Black Hole Sun. I'm sure it's an excellent album. I have to get into it. I'm going to start listening to the whole thing of this and check it out, because I know there's a lot of you probably shaking your heads like, "What are you, a fucking idiot or something?" The next one is the second studio album by Stone Temple Pilots, which I could not stand for the longest time. I still have never listened to the whole album. I think the only songs on here that I like is probably Interstate Love Song and The Big Empty. The reason why I didn't like this album that much is because I felt like that they just became a big joke. Their first album, Core, was just, to me, very serious and very dark and powerful. And then when this one came out, I just felt like they were a bunch of clowns. But again, 1994. We're almost nearing the end over here. Another one from 1994. Some people might consider them alternative. Some might consider them metal. I don't know what to call them. That is Bush with 16 Stone. There's another one that I only ever really knew the hits. Like Everything Zen, Little Things, Come Down, Machine Head. I kind of like Alien. That's a kind of a cool track and shit. But, yeah, there's that. And this one right here says 1993, 1994. So I don't know which is which. But Allison Chains EP, Jar of Flies. It's great through and through. I wouldn't consider it my best or favorite Allison Chains. My favorite tracks are probably, well, not probably. My favorite tracks are Nutshell, Don't Follow, and the MTV song I Stay Away, which was actually a really cool video with a lot of claymation of the band and at this carnival where anything that could go wrong goes wrong, and it's kind of fucking wicked.